Everyone whispered that Arthur Taylor was a monster, someone who destroyed careers for sport. Veteran servers avoided table 4 like it carried a deadly virus, leaving Riley, the newest waitress, to face the storm. The staff expected a public humiliation that night. What they got was something else entirely. A high-stakes psychological chess match that revealed a heartbreaking secret. Riley didn't just survive. She shattered the city's elite hierarchy with a single act of defiance and integrity. Think you know how this underdog story ends? You don't. This is the true story of how one brave waitress brought a ruthless billionaire to his knees with nothing more than a cup of coffee. The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It only makes the grime slicker. That's how Riley felt staring out the back window of Lyle, the most pretentious French restaurant in the Pacific Northwest. She felt slick, greasy, and completely out of place. Riley Jenkins was 23, armed with an art history degree that currently served as a very expensive coaster for her mounting student debt. She had moved from Boise 3 weeks ago, chasing a vague promise of a gallery internship that vanished the moment her bus rolled into the city. Now, she wore a starched white apron that smelled faintly of bleach and fear as she stood on the edge of a Tuesday night dinner service the veterans simply called the Gauntlet. The kitchen was chaos. Stainless steel clanging. Shouts cutting through the air. Chef Jean-Luc, a man whose blood pressure seemed to operate on an entirely different plane of existence, was screaming about truffles. Riley stopped staring at the rain. The rain does not pay your rent. Startled, she nearly dropped a tray of polished silverware. Sorry, chef. Just checking the tables. Check your head, he barked, returning to his pot of reducing veal stock. Riley stepped onto the floor. Lael was breathtaking in a cold, intimidating way. Velvet, mahogany, gold leaf. A bottle of water cost more than her hourly wage. The staff lineup was at 4:30 sharp. Richard Cole, the floor manager with slightly too shiny suits, paced in front of the service area, looking nervous despite the blasting air conditioning. All right. Listen up, Richard said, voice tight. We have a full book tonight. The mayor is coming at 7 o'clock with a party of 6. Treat them well, but... He paused, wiping his upper lip. More importantly, Mr. Taylor is on the books for 6 p.m. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Riley looked around. The other servers, veterans who could carry 5 plates on one arm and uncork vintage Cabernet without breaking eye contact, looked terrified. Beatrice, who had served at Lyle since the Clinton administration, actually crossed herself. Arthur Taylor? A server named Mike whispered. I thought he was in Geneva. He's back, Richard said grimly. And he requested table 4 specifically. Riley tentatively raised her hand. Who is Arthur Taylor? The silence was heavy. Beatrice turned pale. He's not a who, honey, she said softly. He's a what? Arthur Taylor, Richard explained, voice trembling slightly, was the CEO of Taylor Hail Dynamics. He owned half the real estate in the city and held the debt on the other half. He came here maybe twice a year, and each visit was a nightmare. Last time, Mike interjected. He made Chloe cry because her shadow fell across his soup. He had her fired before dessert. 2 years ago, Beatrice added, he bought the building across the street just to evict a barista who got his order wrong. He is a miserable, vindictive, soulless man who eats happiness for breakfast. Riley swallowed hard. Okay, so he's a difficult customer. We just kill him with kindness, right? Beatrice let out a dry, humorless laugh. You don't kill Arthur Taylor with kindness, Riley. You just try to survive him. Richard clapped his hands sharply, startling everyone. Right. The issue is, none of you want to take him. The staff stepped back in unison, leaving him standing alone, a comical synchronized act of cowardice. I can't do it. Richard, Mike said, shaking his head. I'm on thin ice as it is. If he complains, I'm done. I have a mortgage. I'm not risking it. Beatrice said flatly. Richard's eyes darted around the room, desperate. They landed on Riley. Riley felt her blood drain. Me, Richard? No, I've been here 3 weeks. I don't even know the wine list by heart yet. It's perfect, Richard said, manic glint in his eye. You're new. He doesn't know you. You don't have a history with him. Just keep his water full. Don't speak unless spoken to. And for the love of God, don't make eye contact for more than 2 seconds. Richard, this is a bad idea, Beatrice warned. She's a lamb. She's the only one left, Richard hissed. He walked over to Riley and placed a clammy hand on her shoulder. Riley, listen to me. If you get through this service without him demanding to speak to me, I'll give you the Friday night section for a month. That's $2,000 in tips. Easy. $2,000. That was rent. That was student loans. That was food that wasn't instant ramen. Riley swallowed hard. She looked at the terrified faces of her colleagues, then at the empty table 4, a secluded booth in the corner with the best view of the Space Needle. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. The clock struck 6 p.m. The rain hammered against the glass. The heavy oak doors swung open. The host stand went silent. Arthur Taylor did not walk. He glided, propelled by the sheer force of his own importance. He was older than Riley expected, maybe in his late 60s, with silver hair swept back perfectly. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Riley's parents' house. But it was his eyes that froze her. Gray, flat, completely devoid of warmth, like a shark that had learned to walk on land. 2 younger men in suits flanked him, assistants or bodyguards, and peeled away as he approached the dining room, leaving him to enter alone. He didn't wait to be seated. He went straight to table 4, sat, and placed a heavy leather-bound notebook on the table. Richard shoved Riley forward. Go, water, now. Riley grabbed the crystal pitcher. Her hands shook so badly the ice clinked against the glass like wind chimes in a hurricane. She took a deep breath, forced a smile onto her face, and walked toward the corner booth. Don't look at the eyes. Don't look at the eyes. She reached the table. Taylor was staring out the window. He didn't acknowledge her. Good evening, sir, Riley said, voice surprisingly steady. Welcome to Lyle. No reaction. Not a blink. Not a nod. The silence stretched, agonizing and thick. Riley began to pour the water, focusing on the stream, terrified of spilling a single drop on the pristine white tablecloth. Stop, Taylor said. His voice was low, rough, like gravel grinding together. Riley froze, pitcher midder. Sir? Taylor slowly turned his head, looked at the water glass, then her name tag, and finally, her face. I didn't ask for ice, he said. Riley glanced at the glass. 3 cubes floated in it. I apologize, sir. The standard service is. I don't care about standard service, Taylor interrupted, his voice calm but intense. I care about my service. I've been coming here for 20 years. Everyone knows I do not take ice. Did they not brief you, or are you simply incompetent? A flush of heat rose to Riley's neck. From the corner of her eye, she saw Richard hiding behind a pillar, burying his face in his hands. I am new, Mr. Taylor, she said, fighting the urge to run. I wasn't informed. I will replace this immediately. No, Taylor said. He picked up the glass, held it to the light like a jeweler inspecting a diamond. You won't replace it, he said softly. You will fish it out. Excuse me? You made the mistake, Taylor said, setting the glass down with a sharp clack. Fix it. Use a spoon. Use your fingers. I don't care. But remove the ice. Now. The restaurant went silent. Nearby tables paused mid-bite. Everyone was watching. This was pure power play. He wanted to humiliate her. He wanted to see if she would break. Riley eyed the spoon on the table. Silver, heavy. She looked at Taylor. He was smiling, a tiny, cruel curl the lip dot. She could walk away. She could throw the water in his face and quit. She could go back to Boise, but then she remembered the rent. She remembered the gallery internship that fell through. She remembered she had nowhere else to go. Riley took a breath and reached for the spoon. Then she pulled her hand back. "Actually," she said, her voice firm. Taylor raised an eyebrow. "Actually," she repeated, gaining sudden strange strength. "I can't do that, sir." Taylor leaned back, crossing his arms. "And why is that? Is it beneath you?" "No," Riley said, her voice steady. "It's unsanitary. If I put a spoon in there that's been sitting on the table, or, God forbid, my fingers, I'm contaminating your beverage. Lael has health standards, Mr. Taylor, and I respect you too much to serve contaminated water." Before he could react, she grabbed the glass. "I'll bring you a fresh one. No ice. Room temperature or chilled, whichever you prefer." Taylor stared at her. For 5 seconds, the air in the restaurant felt impossibly thin. Richard looked like he was about to have a stroke. Then Arthur Taylor did something no one expected. He exhaled sharply through his nose, a short, precise huff. "Chilled," he said. "From the bottle. Don't open it until it's at the table." "Of course," Riley said. She turned on her heel and walked away, her heart hammering like a trapped bird. She barely made it to the service station before her knees threatened to buckle. She grabbed the counter to steady herself. Beatrice was there, filling a bread basket. Her wide, terrified eyes locked on Riley. "You talked back to him," Beatrice whispered. "You actually talked back to him." "I didn't talk back," Riley said, voice trembling. "I quoted the health code." "He's going to skin you alive," Beatrice said, shaking her head. "That wasn't a win, honey. That was just the opening move. You've made yourself a target." Riley grabbed the bottle of Pelgro from the chiller. Her hands were icy. She forced herself to stand tall. "Well," she thought, "if I'm going down, I'm taking the $2,000 with me." She marched back to the floor. But as she approached table 4, she noticed something. Taylor wasn't staring out the window anymore. He had opened his leather notebook, and next to his fork was a strange object, a small, old-fashioned mechanical kitchen timer, ticking relentlessly. Riley placed the chilled bottle of Pelgro on the table but didn't open it. Instead, she stared at the timer next to Taylor's left hand. Brushed steel. Tick, 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 maddening. Taylor watched her, then tapped the face of his Rolex. "Is there a time limit, Mr. Taylor?" Riley asked, keeping her voice even, though her palms were slick with sweat. "I value efficiency," he replied, voice flat and emotionless. "You have 3 minutes to present the wine list. Recommend a bottle and pour the first glass. If the timer rings before the wine reaches the glass, I leave. And if I leave, I make a phone call to the owner of this building." He reached out and twisted the dial. Click. The tick-in grew louder. Riley didn't hesitate. She didn't run. Panic would show weakness. She moved with swift, fluid precision, signaling Richard for the sommelier's book. Richard, pale and trembling, thrust the heavy leather binder into her hands. "He likes Bordeaux," Richard hissed in her ear. "Expensive Bordeaux. Just give him the 82 Lauer, $3,000. He'll love the price tag." Riley took the book and walked back to the table. She had spent the last 3 weeks memorizing this book, not just prices, but notes, stories, and histories. She placed it down. The timer read 2 minutes 30 seconds. "Mr. Taylor," she began. "The manager suggests the 82 Lauer." Taylor sneered, wrinkling his nose. "Of course he does. Richard is a predictable man who thinks money equals taste. If I wanted to drink a mortgage payment, I'd go to Wall Street." He looked at her, gray eyes piercing. "What do you suggest?" "You have 2 minutes." Riley's mind raced. He hated ice. He hated standard service. He hated predictability. He didn't want the most expensive wine. He wanted the correct wine. She flipped past the Bordeaux, past the Burgundies, to the back of the book sections most servers ignored because the commission was lower. The 2014 Chino from the Lear Valley, Riley said, voice firm. The ticking seemed to slow. Taylor stopped looking at the timer and fixed his gaze on her. Chino? That is a peasant wine. Cabernet Franc. Distinct, yes, but hardly refined. It's honest, Riley said. Counting in her mind, she remembered reading about the winemaker, an old man who refused modern machinery, who still crushed grapes by foot even in his 80s. It had high acidity, notes of graphite and blackberry. It wasn't trying to impress anyone with oak or price. It was bitter, complex. It didn't apologize for what it was. She met his gaze. I think you'd appreciate something that doesn't apologize. The timer hit 1 minute. Taylor stared at her. The silence tightened like a drumhead. Riley could hear Richard whimpering somewhere behind her. Fetch it, Taylor said. Riley spun on her heel and nearly sprinted to the cellar. She bypassed the temperature-controlled displays and went straight to the dusty rack in the back. She grabbed the bottle. 45 seconds later, she was back at the table. She presented the label. He nodded once. 30 seconds. She pulled the corkscrew from her apron. This was the moment of truth. If the cork broke, she was dead. If she fumbled, she was dead. She drove the worm in, twisted and pulled. A clean pop. 20 seconds. She wiped the rim and poured a taste. Taylor swirled the dark red liquid, sniffed it, then took a sip. Riley held her breath. 10 seconds. 9. He didn't speak. He just sat there with the wine on his tongue. Pour, he said. Riley filled his glass just as the timer released a sharp metallic ding. Taylor reached out and silenced it. He took another sip, then looked at the bottle, then at Riley. Acceptable, he muttered. It tastes like whetstones and anger. It suits my mood. Riley exhaled, her knees turning to jelly. I'll give you a moment with the menu, sir. No, Taylor said, opening his notebook again. I know what I want, and this is where you'll likely fail. He pointed a manicured finger toward the kitchen doors. Tell Jean-Luc I want the duck confit. And tell him if he uses that cherry reduction he's been obsessed with lately, I'll send it back. I want it dry. Skin crisp enough to shatter. Meat falling off the bone. No garnish. No parsley. No edible flowers. No nonsense. Just the duck. Understood, Riley said, and Taylor added, eyes narrowing, reset the timer. 20 minutes. If the duck isn't here by then, don't bother bringing it. He cranked the dial again. The ticking resumed. The kitchen was a war zone. When Riley relayed the order, Chef Jean-Luc hurled a towel into a pot of boiling water. No sauce. He wants dry duck. He is a Philistine, a barbarian. Jean-Luc screamed, his face turning the same shade of purple as the onions he was chopping. He wants what he wants. Chef, Riley said, checking her watch. And we have 18 minutes. I cannot cook confit in 18 minutes. It takes time to crisp. Then use the salamander on high heat and watch it like a hawk, Riley said, surprising herself with her own authority. Please, chef, he's timing us. Jean-Luc grumbled, but he moved. The kitchen erupted into frantic motion. Riley stood at the pass, watching the clock. 15 minutes. 10 minutes. At 18 minutes, Jean-Luc plated the duck leg. It was perfect golden brown, sizzling, naked against white ceramic. Service. Jean-Luc barked. Riley grabbed the plate. Checked the rim for fingerprints. Clean. She carried it to the floor and placed it in front of Taylor with 90 seconds to spare. Duck confit. No sauce, no garnish, Riley announced. Taylor examined the duck. He tapped the skin with his fork. It made a hollow scratching sound. Crisp, he acknowledged. He cut into it. The meat slid off the bone without resistance. He took a bite and chewed slowly. Riley waited. This was the worst part. Wine was subjective. Food was not. Taylor stopped chewing. He swallowed. Then he dropped his fork onto the plate with a heavy clatter. "Disgusting," he said. Riley blinked. "Sir, it's salty," Taylor said, pushing the plate away. "Inedible." Jean-Luc oversalted the cure. "It tastes like a salt lick." Riley looked at the duck. Jean-Luc was Michelin-starred. "He didn't oversalt, Mr. Taylor," she said carefully. "Chef Jean-Luc is very precise with his seasoning." "Are you calling me a liar?" Taylor snapped, his voice carrying across the room. Other diners turned, whispering, "No, sir." "I'm just surprised." "Don't be surprised," Taylor hissed. "Be useful." He stabbed the piece of duck he had cut and held it out toward her. "Eat it." Riley recoiled slightly. I can't do that, sir." "It's against protocol to eat from a guest's plate." "I am not a guest," Taylor said, eyes wild. "I am the judge, jury, and executioner of this restaurant's reputation. If you trust the chef so much, prove it. Eat the duck." Richard was frantically signaling from the hallway, waving his arms and mouthing, "Cut it out," urging Riley to apologize and take the plate away. But Riley looked at Taylor's face. He wasn't just angry. He was testing her integrity. He wanted to see if she would lie to appease him or stand by the truth. Riley took a clean fork from the service tray. She cut a small piece from the other side of the duck leg and put it in her mouth. The flavor exploded. Rich, gamey, fatty. But the salt was perfect. Not even borderline. Seasoned to perfection. She swallowed. "Well?" Taylor challenged. "Salty, isn't it?" "Like seawater." Riley met his gaze. This was the moment she expected to be fired. "You never disagree with the customer." "No, sir," she said clearly. "It is not salty. It is perfectly seasoned. In fact, it's one of the best things I've ever tasted." The room went silent. Richard dropped his clipboard. Taylor's face turned red, his body trembling like he might flip the table. You insolent little." "I can take it back," Riley continued, voice trembling but firm. "I can have the chef make you a plain chicken breast if your palate is sensitive today. But I will not tell him he made a mistake when he didn't. That would be a lie. And I don't think you pay for lies, Mr. Taylor." Taylor gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. He stared at the duck, then at Riley. For a long, agonizing minute, he didn't move. Then he picked up his fork again. He took another bite, chewed, swallowed. "You're right," he said quietly. He took another bite. "It's perfect." He didn't look at her. He just kept eating. "Refill my water. And don't look so smug." Riley walked away, heart hammering so hard she thought it might bruise her ribs. She had won the round, but the war wasn't over. By the time the main course was cleared, the storm outside had intensified. Thunder rattled the large panes of Liel's windows. The restaurant was emptying, but Taylor remained. Riley approached to crumb the table. As she swept the breadcrumbs with a silver tool, her eyes fell on the leather notebook. It was open. Taylor had stepped away to the restroom. Leaving his sanctuary unguarded for the first time, Riley knew she shouldn't look, but she couldn't help herself. The page wasn't full of business, figures, or real estate acquisitions. It was a sketch. A charcoal drawing of a woman, young, laughing, sitting at this very table 4. The Space Needle loomed in the background. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, Catherine's birthday. 1984. The night she said yes, Riley felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This wasn't a business dinner. It was a vigil. Footsteps. She quickly straightened. Taylor returned. He looked older now. The adrenaline of the confrontation had faded, leaving behind a weary, gray exhaustion. He sat down and adjusted his napkin. His elbow knocked the empty wine glass. It tipped. In slow motion, the glass hit the edge of the bread plate and shattered. Shards flew across the table. One large piece skidded across the notebook, tearing the page. Taylor froze. He stared at the torn sketch. The rip went right through the woman's face. "No," he whispered, a sound of pure devastation. He scrambled to grab the notebook, hands shaking violently. No, no, no. He wasn't the billionaire tyrant anymore. He was a panicked old man trying to save a piece of paper. In his haste, he sliced his finger on a shard of glass. Blood bloomed across the white tablecloth like a red flower. "Get away," he shouted as Riley stepped forward. "Don't touch it, Mr. Taylor. You're bleeding," she said, ignoring his shout. She didn't call Richard. She didn't call the busboy. She grabbed a clean linen napkin and reached for his hand. "I said get away." He snapped, pulling his hand back like a wounded animal. "Arthur, stop," Riley said, using his first name. The shock of it made him pause. "Let me see your hand," she said gently, her voice soft, the tone one uses with a frightened child. "The sketch is fine. The tear is clean. It can be taped, restored, but you are bleeding on the tablecloth." Taylor looked at her, eyes wide and wet. The mask had slipped completely. He let her take his hand. She wrapped the napkin around his finger, applying pressure. I drew that," he murmured, voice trembling. 40 years ago. I'm not an artist. It's terrible, but it's the only one I have of her here." "It's beautiful," Riley said softly. "You captured her laugh. That's the hardest part to draw." Taylor looked up at her. "Really? You know art?" he asked. "I have a degree in art history," Riley said with a sad smile. "Fat lot of good it's doing me, waiting tables. But I know a gesture drawing when I see one. You loved her very much." Taylor slumped in his seat. The fight had gone out of him. She died 5 years ago. Today is her birthday. We came here every year. "Table 4, he whispered, glancing around the empty, cold restaurant. "It used to be warmer here. The lights were softer, the food simpler." "Things change," Riley said gently. "They shouldn't," Taylor said bitterly. "Not the important things." He looked down at the torn page again. "I'm a foolish old man, aren't I? Terrorizing waitresses because I'm lonely." "You're not foolish," Riley said. "But you are terrifying." Taylor let out a short, dry chuckle. "I suppose I am." He cleared his throat, took a deep breath, and straightened his tie. The mask was sliding back into place, but thinner now. "I want dessert," he announced. Though the bite was gone from his tone, the menu has a Valona chocolate souffle or a lemon tart. Riley offered. Taylor shook his head. "No, I don't want those. I want what Catherine used to order every year. But I don't see it on the menu anymore." "What was it?" Riley asked. "Blackberry cobbler," Taylor said. "With vanilla bean ice cream. Not gelato. Not sorbet. Ice cream." Rayleigh's heart sank. This was a high-end French restaurant. They didn't do cobblers. They didn't even have blackberries in the prep station. And Chef Jean-Luc would rather set himself on fire than serve a rustic American dessert. "Mr. Taylor," Riley began. "I don't think the kitchen." Taylor's gray eyes pleaded. "Please, it's for her." Riley looked at the silent timer on the table. She looked at the blood-stained napkin. She looked at the torn sketch of the laughing woman. She knew the answer was no. The kitchen didn't have the ingredients. Richard would forbid it. "Give me 20 minutes, Riley said. She burst into the kitchen. "Chef, I need blackberries, flour, sugar, and butter now." Jean-Luc looked up from scrubbing down the station. "We are closed for orders. We do not have blackberries. We have raspberries for that is it." "We have to make a blackberry cobbler," Riley said, frantic. Jean-Luc laughed, a cruel, barking sound. This is Lucille, not a truck stop in Alabama. No, chef, please, Riley begged. It's for Taylor. His late wife's birthday. It's what they ate here 40 years ago. I don't care if it's the Queen of England's birthday, Jean-Luc shouted. I do not have blackberries. I cannot cook what I do not have. Riley stood there, defeated. Tears pricked her eyes. She had come so far. Survived the wine. Survived the duck. Survived the explosion of the sketch. And now, to fail on the memory of his wife? Then she remembered the bartender, Mike, had been making a special cocktail earlier, a Seattle Storm. It used blackberry puree and fresh blackberries for garnish. She ran to the bar. Mike was wiping down glasses. Mike, the garnish tray. Do you have blackberries? Mike looked startled. Yeah, maybe half a pint. Why? Give them to me, Riley said. She grabbed the small container. Not enough for a full cobbler, but enough for a ramekin, a single portion. She ran back to the kitchen. Jean-Luc blocked her path. Get out of my station. Chef, move, Riley growled. Jean-Luc blinked. The mouse had roared. I am going to make a biscuit dough, Riley said, tying her apron tighter. I need cold butter. I need heavy cream. You can fire me after tonight, but right now you are going to get out of my way. Or you are going to help me. Jean-Luc stared at her. He looked at the meager container of blackberries in her hand. He looked at the determination set in her jaw. He let out a long, dramatic sigh. You will burn the butter, he muttered. He walked over to the fridge and pulled out a block of expensive French butter. Move over. If we are going to make this peasant slop, we will do it correctly. Riley smiled. Thank you, chef. They worked in tandem, a bizarre sight. The imperious French chef and the terrified new waitress, shoulder to shoulder. Riley smashed the blackberries with sugar and a squeeze of lemon. Jean-Luc rubbed the butter into the flour with his fingertips, creating a shaggy, perfect dough. They put the ramekin in the oven 15 minutes. Riley paced outside the oven door. It needs ice cream, she realized. He said no gelato. We only have gelato, Jean-Luc said. Vanilla bean gelato. He'll know, Riley said. He's a shark. Then we cheat, Jean-Luc said with a wink. Add a splash of heavy cream to the gelato and refreeze it for 5 minutes in the blast chiller. It will coat the tongue like American ice cream. Riley looked at him. You're a genius. I know, Jean-Luc grunted. The timer beeped. Riley pulled the ramekin from the oven. Purple juice bubbled up around the golden brown crust. It smelled like summer. It smelled like home. She placed it on a serving plate and added the scoop of modified ice cream. No powdered sugar. No mint leaf. Simple. Perfect. She walked out to the dining room. The restaurant was empty, save for table 4. The lights were dimmed. Rain lashed the windows. Taylor sat with his head in his hands. He looked up as she approached. Riley placed the steaming ramekin in front of him. Blackberry cobbler, she whispered, with vanilla ice cream. Taylor stared. Steam curled, carrying the scent of cooked fruit and butter. His eyes welled. He picked up the spoon. His hand shook, not with rage this time. He took a bite. Closed his eyes. A tear leaked out and rolled down his cheek, tracing the deep lines of his face. It tastes like 1984, he whispered. He ate in silence, scraping the ramekin clean. When he was done, he folded his napkin and placed it on the table. His face was no longer hard. Just tired, sad, grateful. What is your name? He asked. I never asked, he said. Riley, she replied. Riley, Taylor repeated. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. Do you like working here? Riley hesitated. I need the money. I'm an art historian. This is just survival. Taylor nodded, uncapped a fountain pen, wrote something on a check, tore it out, and placed it face down on the table. "This was the best service I've received in 20 years, he said. "Because it was real. You didn't serve the millionaire. You served the man." He stood, careful with the torn notebook page, and walked out into the rain alone. Riley stood for a moment in silence, then reached for the check. She flipped it over. Her breath hitched. She grabbed the back of a chair to keep from falling. The check was made out to Riley Jenkins. The amount, $50 in the memo line, written in shaky, elegant script, for the tuition. "Go find your art." Riley covered her mouth to stifle a sob. More money than she had ever seen. Freedom. But the story wasn't over. Under the check was another item. A business card, not for his real estate firm, but for the Taylor Foundation for the Arts. On the back, a phone number and a note. "Call me tomorrow. I have a gallery that needs a curator who isn't afraid to tell me the truth." Riley looked out at the rain-slicked city. The fear was gone. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was the girl who faced the dragon and found a human heart underneath. The silence in Lyle, after Taylor's departure, was heavier than the storm outside. Riley stood by table 4, check clutched in her hand, knuckles white. The number $50,000 seemed to burn through the paper. Richard, the manager, emerged from the shadows near the wine rack. He had been watching. He had seen the checkbook. He had seen the handshake. His shoes clicked sharply on the hardwood as he approached. He didn't look at Riley, only at the slip of paper in her hand. "Well," Richard said, voice dripping with false camaraderie, "it seems the gauntlet wasn't so bad after all. Good work, Riley. Team effort." He reached out his hand. "I'll take that for the safe. We'll process it with the nightly deposit and calculate the tip pool percentages later." Riley pulled her hand back, pressing the check against her chest. "Excuse me," she said. Richard's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of annoyance. "The check, Riley. It's a gratuity. Per house policy, all gratuities over $500 are pooled and distributed by management. 10% for the bar, 15% for the kitchen, 25% for the house. Administrative fees." Riley looked at him. She saw the greed in his eyes, naked and ugly. He didn't care about the kitchen or the bar. He saw a payday. "The check is made out to me," Riley said, voice surprisingly steady. "Riley Jenkins. It's not made out to Liel. And the memo line says tuition. This isn't a tip, Richard. It's a gift." Richard's face hardened. He stepped closer, invading her space. "Don't be naive. You were wearing a Liel uniform, serving Liel food. That money belongs to the establishment. If you try to walk out of here with it, I'll call the police and report it as theft. I'll ruin you." "Theft?" Riley laughed a sharp, incredulous sound. "He handed it to me. He's an eccentric billionaire." Richard spat. "I could easily claim you manipulated him, or that he made a mistake. Give me the check, Riley. Don't make this ugly. You're a temp. You're nobody." Riley looked around. The restaurant was empty of customers, but the staff had gathered. Mike, the bartender, drying a glass, watching. Beatrice hugging a stack of menus. The bus is frozen. "Mike," Richard called, not looking away from Riley. "Back me up here. Pool rules, right? You want your cut of 50 grand? Mike looked at Riley, at the check. He remembered the fear in the room an hour ago when Richard had tried to hide. "Actually, Richard," Mike said, his voice echoing, "I didn't serve table 4. I made a drink. Riley takes the hit. If that money is hers, it's hers." Richard turned, his face blotchy red. "Excuse me. You're fired." "You can't fire him," Beatrice said, stepping forward. "And you can't have that check. We all heard what Taylor said. He said it was for her tuition. If you touch a dime of that girl's money, I'm walking. And I'm taking the dinner shift roster with me. Mutiny? Richard laughed nervously. Over a waitress who's been here 3 weeks? She's not just a waitress. A deep voice boomed from the kitchen. The double doors swung open. Chef Jean-Luc marched out, still in his stained apron, holding a heavy steel ladle like a mace. He passed Richard and stood next to Riley, a foot shorter than the manager, but radiating 10 times the menace. She is the only person in this building who understands food, Jean-Luc growled. She defended my duck. She respected the ingredients. She made the cobbler. You, Richard? You would have served him the salt. Let him eat garbage just to get his money. The money is yours, mademoiselle. If this vulture tries to take it, he'll have to answer to me, and I have very sharp knives. Richard looked at the united front, the bartender, the veteran server, the head chef, and the new girl. His power had evaporated the moment Arthur Taylor walked out the door. He straightened his jacket, trying to salvage dignity. Fine, keep it. But don't bother coming back tomorrow. You're finished here, Riley. Riley looked at Richard, then at the check in her hand, the key to her future. Then she looked at her friends. I wasn't planning on it, Riley said. She untied her apron and dropped it at Richard's feet. I quit. And Richard, she added, the 82 Lauer, it's corked. You might want to check the cellar before you try to sell it to the mayor. She turned and walked out the front door into the rain, leaving the apron and the old life behind. The storm that had battered Seattle the night before had vanished, leaving a sky of piercing, scrubbed clean blue. Sunlight reflected off the wet pavement, turning the city into a glistening mirror. But Riley Jenkins didn't notice. She stood on the sidewalk in the Arts District, clutching the strap of her purse so tightly her fingers ached. Ahead loomed the Taylor Foundation. Glass and steel, sharp angles and intimidating heights, designed to make anyone standing at its base feel small. Riley smoothed the lapels of her thrifted blazer. She had spent an hour that morning steaming the wrinkles from her best slacks, repeating the number on the check, $50,000. It was real. The deposit slip in her pocket was proof, but as she stared at the brass intercom panel, the imposter syndrome that had haunted her since college roared back. You are a waitress. You serve coffee. You wipe tables. You don't belong in a glass castle. She almost turned around, almost walked back to the bus stop. But then she remembered Richard's face when she dropped the apron. She remembered the taste of the blackberry cobbler. Riley took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the crisp morning air, and pressed the buzzer. Riley, the voice came instantly through the speaker. It wasn't a secretary or security guard. It was him. Yes, Mr. Taylor. It's 9 o'clock. The door is unlocked. Come up. She pushed through the heavy glass doors. The lobby was cavernous, a cathedral of silence smelling of floor wax, old paper, and money. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the polished concrete, the sound echoing toward the high ceiling. Art filled the space, but it felt like a graveyard of creativity. Dozens of large canvases were draped in white dust sheets. Standing like ghosts in the morning light, she found the spiral staircase and ascended. At the top, the mezzanine opened into a sprawling office that felt less like a workspace and more like a sanctuary. One entire wall of glass framed the Space Needle. Arthur Taylor was waiting, but the shark in the bespoke suit was gone. In his place stood a man in a soft navy cashmere sweater, reading glasses perched at the end of his nose. He looked weary, but the jagged, terrifying edge he'd carried, Liel, had softened. He didn't offer a handshake. He simply gestured to the room. You're punctual, he observed, removing his glasses. I appreciate that. Most people who come here are late because they're too busy admiring the architecture downstairs. It's a beautiful building, Riley said, stepping fully into the room. It's a morslum, Taylor corrected gently. A storage unit for things I don't understand. He walked over to his desk where the leather notebook from the night before sat closed. Next to it, a ceramic mug of coffee steamed black, no saucer. "Did you go to the bank?" he asked. "I did," Riley replied. "The branch manager thought I was laundering money. He had to call your office to verify the check." Taylor chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "I imagine he did. People aren't used to generosity without strings attached." He moved toward a large easel in the corner, covered by a heavy linen sheet. "I told you last night I have a gallery," he said, his voice reflective. "That wasn't entirely true. I have a warehouse. A collection. My wife, Catherine, she didn't buy art for investment. She didn't buy the names that appear in Forbes. She had an eye for the forgotten." He rested a hand on the draped canvas. "She collected the artists who were rejected, the ones mocked by critics, the ones told they were too messy, too loud, too emotional." With a sudden fluid motion, he pulled the sheet away. Riley stepped forward, breath catching in her throat. The painting was chaotic, a street scene rendered in thick, violent strokes of oil paint. At first, it looked like a mess of gray and neon smudges. But as Riley squinted and stepped closer, the chaos resolved itself. The smudges became rain-slicked streets. The neon blurs became traffic lights reflecting in puddles. And in the center, formed by the negative space of darkness, were two figures holding hands. A masterpiece of perspective. "The critics called this amateur trash in 1990, Taylor said softly. "They said the artist didn't understand form. Catherine bought it for $500 because she said it felt like how a rainy day smells. Last week, an appraiser told me it's worth $2 million. He turned to Riley, gray eyes searching her face. "I have 4,000 pieces like this in storage, and I have no idea what to do with them." Riley tore her eyes away from the canvas. "But you have a foundation. You have staff. I have employees," Taylor corrected, voice hardening slightly. "I went through 5 curators in the last year alone. Do you know why I fired them?" Riley guessed. "Because they weren't qualified?" "No, their resumes were impeccable. Harvard, Yale, the Sorbonne. I fired them because they were liars." Taylor began pacing, agitation returning, though it was directed at memory, not her. "They told me what they thought I wanted to hear. If I frowned at a painting, they said it was garbage. If I smiled, they said it was genius. They were sick with deference, terrified of the billionaire. They served me lies on a silver platter. They tried to sell me trends and market value. Treated Catherine's collection like a stock portfolio." He stopped pacing and stood directly in front of her. "You, Riley? You told me the water was unsanitary when I ordered you to use your fingers. You told me the duck was perfect when I tried to gaslight you into taking it back. You risked your job, your rent, and your reputation to protect the integrity of a dish and the memory of a woman you never met." He extended a hand, palm up. "I don't need another expert. I can buy experts by the dozen. I need a truth teller. I need someone who isn't afraid of me. I need someone who will fight for this art the way you fought for Table 4. Riley looked at his hand, then back at the painting. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a mix of exhilaration and terror. "Mr. Taylor, I have a BA in art history. I've never run a gallery. I don't know the first thing about logistics or insurance." "You can learn logistics," Taylor interrupted firmly. "You can hire accountants for insurance. What you have integrity cannot be taught." He walked back to his desk and picked up a folder. "The position is director of the Catherine Taylor Collection. The starting salary is $80,000 a year, with full benefits and a discretionary budget for acquisitions. Your job is simple. Go into the basement, find the art that makes you feel something, and put it on these walls. Tell the truth." $80,000. It was a number that didn't compute. It was stability. A future where she didn't have to count pennies at the grocery store. Taylor added, a small, genuine smile touching the corners of his eyes. You'll never have to serve coffee again. Riley felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She blinked him away, standing up straighter. She wasn't the girl in the apron anymore. I'll take it, Riley said, her voice steady and clear. But I have one condition. Taylor raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You're negotiating already. Good. What is it? Riley pointed to the leather notebook on his desk. The sketch, the one of Catherine. We frame it. We put it in the lobby, right by the entrance. Taylor looked down at the notebook, tracing the leather cover with his thumb. It's not a masterpiece. It's a shaky drawing by a sentimental old man. The critics will laugh at it. Let them laugh, Riley said. It's honest. It's the reason this collection exists. It's the heart of the building. Taylor looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Done. 6 months later, the opening gala of the Taylor Gallery was the event of the season. The Morslem had come alive. Dust sheets were gone. Walls vibrated with color, showcasing works hidden in the dark for decades. The air buzzed with the chatter of the city's elite politicians, investors, artists, and critics, all drinking champagne and marveling at the collection. Riley stood near the back of the room. She wore a simple, elegant black dress that fit perfectly, her hair pinned back. She watched the crowd, not with fear, but with the calm, discerning eye of a curator. Arthur Taylor approached, weaving through the throng. He looked younger than he had in years, energized by the noise and life in the room. He carried 2 flutes of vintage champagne. To table 4, he said, handing her a glass. To the cobbler, Riley replied with a smile. Clinking her glass against his. The reviews are already coming in online, Taylor noted, scanning the room. They're calling the curation bold and revelatory. You were right about the sketch in the lobby. People are stopping there first. Some are crying. It's a good story, Riley said. People love a true story. She took a sip of champagne, her gaze drifting toward the entrance. A commotion at the velvet rope caught her eye. Richard, the manager from Liel, was there, trying to talk his way past security. He looked smaller than she remembered. His cheap suit sagged under the gallery lights, hair thinning. He craned his neck, desperate to be seen, desperate to claim a piece of the inner circle. His eyes locked on Riley. For a moment, time froze. Richard's jaw went slack. The waitress he had tried to bully, the girl he had fired, was no longer serving drinks. She was standing next to the billionaire, holding a crystal flute. She was the master of the house. He stared at her with a mixture of envy and regret, so potent it almost hurt. He took a half step forward, perhaps to wave, perhaps to try and claim some credit for her success. Riley didn't scowl. She didn't glare. She didn't give him the satisfaction of anger. She simply held his gaze for a single second, raised her glass in a polite, silent toast, a final goodbye to the life she had left behind, and then turned her back on him. Is everything all right? Taylor asked, noticing the brief exchange. Riley looked at the painting of the rain-slicked street, then back at her friend. Yes, she said, her voice warm and steady. Everything is perfect. She had faced the dragon. She had walked through the fire, and she had come out the other side, not just with the gold, but with her soul intact. And she realized that was the only masterpiece that really mattered. And that is the story of Riley and the Billionaire. A reminder that true value isn't found in a bank account or a tailored suit. It's found in integrity. Riley could have taken the easy way out. She could have lied about the duck. She could have fled the table. She could have let the manager steal her moment. But she didn't. She realized that even when serving the most powerful person in the room, your dignity is the one thing no one can buy unless you willingly sell it. What would you have done? Would you have eaten the duck? Would you have stood up to Richard? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell, so you never miss a story about the underdogs who fight back and win. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.